Hello, my friends. It's Dr. Sharon with Klimek Reviews. Today we're talking about Piaget's stages of intellectual or cognitive development. This is actually really important in answering just about any developmental question. So it's really important that you watch this if you're getting ready to take your NCLEX or a standardized test as part of your nursing education. So stay tuned. Hello, Klimek Review family. It's Dr. Sharon with Klimek Reviews, the home of the very best NCLEX review in the entire universe, in my opinion. Y'all, I've been working with Mark Klimek for a long time, over 25 years. He was my college professor. He was my clinical instructor when I was in college. And then I taught with him, and then I started doing Klimek Reviews with him. Y'all, he is the very best at understanding how to pass NCLEX. Now, that's my opinion. I'm sure other people have different opinions, but I've worked with him for a long time. He's incredibly generous. He's incredibly ethical. He wants you to pass. He charges for his NCLEX. You're going to find that it's worth it if you decide to pay for his NCLEX review. It's online on demand, and you get taught by the GOAT himself, Mark Klimek. Now he's getting ready to retire. Well, he's retired from his official teaching job. I don't know how long he's going to be till he retires from NCLEX reviews, but at some point you say, yeah, I think I'm done. Anyway, today I'm talking about Piaget's stages of cognitive development. We do talk about it more in depth in the Klimek review itself, but I'm going to touch on it here. This is what you're going to find in the Blue Book. The Blue Book is right behind me. You can order it from Amazon, or you can get it at klimekreviews.com. And you can purchase the Blue Book app. We also do monthly online tutoring, small group tutoring. You purchase a monthly package and you get 4 tutorings in that month. We also have a streaming service. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, you have to understand that Piaget hypothesized that there are essentially 4 stages. Sensorimotor is ages 0 to 2. Ages 0 to 2 can only think about now, and it's all about sensing. So what can I sense? What can I see? What can I hear? What can I taste? That's why they put everything in their mouth. That's why they grab everything. That's why they're constantly exploring their environment, because that's how they learn. It's all through sensorimotor. So in other words, they're not able to conceptualize the future at all, right? So if you say, I'll be back in a minute, sweetie, they're like, yeah, I don't understand that. So this is something to remember, and it's ages 0 to 2. So I have a 2-year-old grandson. And so when I say mommy and daddy, I'm babysitting him. I say, mommy and daddy will be back soon. He kind of looks at me like, right? Like he's like, okay. So he does understand that mommy and daddy are alive somewhere. So at this stage, they are learning the concept of object permanence. So even if I can't see it, it is alive and well somewhere, or it is present somewhere. So if I put my toy away, my toy is still there. I just can't see it. Mommy and daddy aren't here right now. They are somewhere. I just can't see them. And so they are learning object permanence. And this is kind of what they're learning, but it still is a concept of now. The idea of they're going to come back later. They sort of are struggling to understand that when they're 2, they're in, 2.5, 2.75. They're starting to understand, okay, maybe mommy and daddy, I understand the future. They are coming back later. But this is really where they're focusing on what can I see, what can I do, what can I hear now? And I don't think that much about the future. And then pre-operational is ages 3 to 6. This is they can figure out now and today, but it still is understanding. So they can understand that mommy and daddy are coming back soon. But if you say next week we're going to go on vacation, they can't understand that. And they can't understand what is this abstract idea of vacation. Now you may say, well, I have a 5-year-old and he can understand that. Well, that's great. But what you have to understand is on the NCLEX, you have to go with Piaget, because the NCLEX has to use some kind of a rule in order to write questions and have there be an objectively right answer. It can't be just your opinion, right? That's a big thing I've talked a lot about is NCLEX has to have an objectively right answer. And so they have to have a rule that the test writers follow and that the test takers follow in order to answer it. And so they're going to follow this Piaget. So even if you have a 5-year-old nephew or grandson or child, and you're like, man, they're able to abstract. Well, that's great. You know what? Your child is extremely ahead of all of their peers, and that's great. But on the NCLEX, that's not how you're going to answer the question. Okay. So pre-operational, they're very magical thinkers. And they just about anything is possible. Okay. So if you say, what do you think would happen if we traveled to the moon? They're going to go, we're going to travel to the moon. They ask you questions like what if questions that you're like, that would never happen, honey. But like, but what if it did? But it would never happen. But what if it did? Right? They're very magical, and they believe anything can happen. That's why they're scared that there's monsters under their bed. That's why their animals have feelings. That's why they do pretend play all the time. They have an imaginary friend that they're playing with, right? It's very magical. And so if you want to do any teaching with them, you often do it via play. But they're not able to conceptualize concrete things necessarily. Now, that's a little bit harder to understand. So let me help you understand what that means. Concrete operational is ages 7 to 11. This is where they can understand concrete things like skills. And in order to be able to learn a skill, you have to understand that if I have a vial of insulin and I draw that insulin up in my syringe, the amount of fluid in my syringe is the same amount of fluid in my vial, even though they look very different. The shape is very different. And it would be easy to go, how is that the same amount? The vial is a different shape than the syringe. And so concrete operations is being able to understand that just because something changes shape doesn't mean it's more or less. Okay, so that's important to learn here. And that's why they can learn skills, because they can understand that if the skin got scraped off the knee, you fell down, you scraped your knee, skin got scraped off, it's not magically bleeding. Okay, it doesn't take a magical spell to stop it. They can understand that the skin on the surface got scraped off, and that skin is probably laying on the sidewalk somewhere. You can't see it because it's too small, but it's laying on the sidewalk somewhere. And because that, it exposed what's underneath. See, that's a concrete idea. That's very, very concrete. And they can understand that, which is why starting at age 7, according to Piaget, you can start teaching skills. You can also talk about the future. Starting at age 7, you can talk about what do you want to do in the future. We're going on vacation next week. We're going on vacation next summer. Maybe someone at age 5 could understand we're going on vacation tomorrow, because that's tomorrow, because you're starting to pack and everything. But for someone at age 10 or 8 or 9, you can say, all right, I just scheduled our vacation for next summer. And they go, where are we going next summer? You say, we're going to Disney World. And they're like, yay. And they're telling other friends, next summer, we're going to Disney World. And they understand that it's a ways away, right? And so they can understand that. And they may even start looking at their clothes and thinking about what they want to take. And so that's concrete operational. Now, I understand that some of you probably have a 4-year-old who can do that. That's great. But on the NCLEX, you cannot use your own child's development to answer questions. You have to use this in order to answer questions. And then formal operational, according to Piaget, starting at age 12, is abstract thinking. So they can do all the things that we already talked about, plus they can abstract. So they can think about, you can have a conversation with a 13-year-old, say, why shouldn't you smoke? Well, I shouldn't smoke because I could get lung cancer. See, if you talk about someone could get lung cancer with a 6-year-old, according to Piaget, they're going to be like, you have lung cancer, mommy? Well, no, honey, but you could get lung cancer if you smoke. See, that's why when they're younger, we say, don't smoke, and don't smoke. It's bad. And they all go, we won't smoke. It's bad. Right. But at some point they start to abstract and they go, well, but what if I only smoked at parties? What's the probability that I'm going to get lung cancer if I only smoke at parties? Right? And so they start to abstract, and that's later on. But when they're young, we're very, very concrete with them. All right, let's do some questions to try to understand how these things can be applied. A nurse is assessing a 4-year-old child during a well child visit. The child believes that the moon follows them when they walk at night. According to Piaget, which cognitive characteristic is the child exhibiting? Conservation, egocentric thinking, concrete operational thought, or formal operational thought? So formal operational thought is abstract, and so we're not going to pick that one. Concrete operational thought is that set of being able to understand that one thing, a glass of water, can become ice and it's still the same amount of fluid. It's ice now. It was liquid before, and there's still the same amount of fluid. That's concrete operational thought, which is also called conservation. Okay, so A and C are essentially the same thing, because conservation occurs during concrete operational thinking. So egocentrism is where they think they're the center, kind of the center of the universe, right? So if they see the moon, they're like, the moon is following me. Well, no, the moon's not really following you, honey. Yes, it is. It's following me. Why is it following me? Okay, so egocentrism is something that occurs in that pre-operational thinking. The nurse is teaching parents about their 6-month-old infant's development. Which activity should the nurse suggest to promote cognitive development according to Piaget's sensorimotor stage? So anything that involves their senses. Playing peekaboo. Well, playing peekaboo involves your senses, doesn't it? I can see you. Now I can't. Now I can see you. Now I can't, right? That's very sensorimotor. So that's a great one. Encouraging pretend play. Pretend play is the opposite of your senses. Okay. It's something you can't see, you can't feel, you can't hear. So no, that's not good. Introducing simple board games. Simple board games are not really learning by senses. It's more learning by thinking and understanding rules. So that's really not great. Teaching the alphabet. Teaching the alphabet, well, it's definitely too much for 6-month-old. I just realized we're looking at a 6-month-old. So teaching alphabet, I mean, you could start to sing alphabet songs with your 2-year-old if you want to, but that's not sensorimotor. And here we're talking about a 6-month-old. So peekaboo is your best answer for a 6-month-old. A nurse is planning care for a 7-year-old child hospitalized for appendicitis. Which cognitive milestones should the nurse expect the child to have achieved according to Piaget theory? Okay, so a 7-year-old is in concrete operations. So 3 to 6 is pre-operational. A 7-year-old is concrete operations. Now, I'm a little hesitant to say should have achieved. So I don't know if they're going to ask me what they should have already achieved in pre-operational thinking, or if they're going to give me something they should achieve in formal operations. Or sorry, something they should have achieved in concrete operations. So let's see what we've got. Understanding conservation of volume. Well, conservation of volume occurs in concrete operations. So I'm going to keep that on the list. Engaging in abstract reasoning. That's not right. That's the next stage. Exhibiting egocentric thought. Well, 7-year-olds should be well past that. Lacking object permanence. Again, way past that. So the only one that makes any sense is understanding conservation of volume. That's where you can understand a glass of water may have the same volume as a large chunk of ice. Because if you melt the ice, you can see it turns into water, whatever. And so that's conservation of volume. Now, I don't know if they should have already achieved it when they're 7 or if they should be in the process of achieving it. See, if a parent came to me, the reason I'm picking A is because none of the other answers are clearly wrong. Okay. But if a parent came to me and they said, my 7-year-old is struggling understanding that the ice that's liquid, when it turns liquid, is the same as the ice when it was frozen. If they tell me there's a 7-year-old is struggling with that, I would say, let's keep working with them on this. But if a 10-year-old parent of a 10-year-old came and said that to me, I'd say, oh, they may be a little developmentally delayed, because they should have achieved that by the time they leave that stage, right? And they leave that stage at 12. And if they're 10 and they already haven't gotten it, I'm going to be like, they may be a little developmentally delayed. I'm not sure that I would say that to a 7-year-old's parent. I would say, let's keep working with them and see if they're going to continue to do. However, all of the other things are so far either behind or above that it doesn't make sense to choose any of those other answers. The nurse is teaching the parents of a 10-year-old child about appropriate activities. Which activity is most suitable for this child according to Piaget's concrete operational stage? Solving algebra problems. So that's more abstract thinking. Engaging in make-believe play. That's definitely not concrete operations, because pre-operational is magical thinking. Concrete operations is not make-believe or magical thinking. Learning a foreign language. Y'all, that really doesn't fit into any of them, because language learning can start as early as listening to someone talking. So a 6-month-old could be in the process of learning a language. And so it really doesn't fit into any of them because language development is sort of outside the normal developmental pathway. Even developmentally delayed children still acquire language. So I'm not going to keep that on the list. Participating in a science fair project. So a science fair project is where they understand concrete operations. That's what science is, because science is about what you can see, you can hear, you can taste, you can feel, right? Science, by definition, is observing reality. That's what science is. Philosophy is understanding thoughts and non-observable things. So philosophy explores the unseen world. Science explores the seen world, or the world that can be sensed with our senses. So science fair project would be a great way to learn the concrete definitions of things and how things work, and how water can turn to ice and ice can turn back to water, and gas, right? You can boil it and it turns into a gas or whatever. So those are perfect things to do at this age. A 15-year-old adolescent is hospitalized for asthma management. The nurse notes the patient is able to think about hypothetical situations and discuss future plans. Which stage of cognitive development does this represent? So hypothetical situations is a step beyond concrete operations. And the only step beyond concrete operations is formal operations. So that would be the correct answer. A nurse is evaluating a 2-year-old child's cognitive development. Which behavior would indicate that the child is in Piaget's pre-operational stage? Understanding the concept of time, performing simple logical reasoning, using symbolic play with a toy telephone, or crying for mommy when dropped off at daycare. So crying for mommy when dropped off at daycare is learning object permanence. And that's done in the earliest stage, sensorimotor. So we're going to cross off D. Using symbolic play with a toy telephone. So symbolic play with a toy telephone, maybe that would be taking your computer mouse and going, hello, right? Have you ever had a kid do that? Picks up the TV remote and they're talking on the telephone. Like, that's so great. Like, that's such a great pre-operational activity, because they're it's sort of magical thinking, right? That they can talk on the phone. It's sort of pretend play, but it's also taking something that isn't what it's supposed to be, and showing they can understand the meaning behind symbols, right? And so that's a perfect thing to do when they're in pre-operational. Performing simple logical reasoning, that would be more concrete operational. Understanding the concept of time, really, that doesn't start until concrete operational. They can start to do that maybe in their pre-operational, but a 2-year-old, probably not. They're just starting to understand the concept of later today. So to talk about the concept of time, and that involves a lot of complex thinking. So I would think that would be either later in pre-operational or early concrete operational. The nurse is assessing a 5-year-old child who believes that their toy bear feels sad when left alone. Okay, I know there's some of you out there who still think your toy bear from your childhood is sad when you leave him at home alone. I know some of you have your childhood toy stuffed animal that you still want to tuck into bed at night because you have so many memories of that stuffed animal giving you comfort, and they were your friend, right? And that was appropriate when they were in pre-operational. And it's hard to let some of that go because you're like, I love my stuffed animal. Okay, sorry. The nurse is assessing a 5-year-old child who believes that their toy bear feels sad when left alone. That makes me sad just thinking about that. According to Piaget, this is an example of deductive reasoning. That really is quite abstract. Thinking, reversibility. I don't know what that is. Conservation is the water turning to ice, turning to steam thing. That occurs in concrete operations. Animism is magical thinking. It's making particularly unalive things act like they're alive. So even a tree is watching me, or the moon is following me, or my stuffed animal, my stuffed teddy bear feels sad when I leave. That's animism. Parents of a 12-year-old are concerned that their child is spending a lot of time daydreaming about future careers and traveling the world. What should the nurse explain to the parents? All right, so 12-year-olds, they're entering formal operations where they're starting to abstract and hypothesize And this isn't the same as magical thinking. This is daydreaming about the future and possibilities. So they're really thinking in hypotheticals. Y'all, this is a very important stage for kids to go through. This is definitely a part of abstract thinking. And it's something that for kids who are vulnerable kids who have not had safety in their life, who've not had enough food in their life to eat, who haven't had enough clothes to wear, they struggle to get to this point because they're just trying to figure out where their food is coming from today, or they're just trying to figure out how to stay safe today. They're just trying to figure out where to get clothes that'll fit them to wear to school. And they don't have the mental resources to daydream about the future when today is so unsafe. And this is why keeping our kids safe and fed and clothed is so important, because in order to fully achieve full development, cognitive development, they have to have some safe spaces to daydream about their future. And so this is really, really important. This behavior is abnormal and may indicate depression. Absolutely not. The child is exhibiting signs of egocentrism common at this age. Absolutely not. Daydreaming is a normal part of the formal operational stage. True. The child may be experiencing no, they're not delayed. This is normal. This is very important for kids to be able to go through in order to achieve full cognitive development. Now, if they're not able to do this at 12, maybe if they're in an unsafe situation at 12, maybe they get to a safe situation when they're 18 and they can start to do this. So developmental delays do not mean your child or the child is unintelligent. It has nothing to do with basic intelligence. Well, sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. It has to do with whether they're able to achieve the previous stage. So they have to, in order to go and move into formal operations, they have to have been able to do concrete operations, and they had to have had the resources and the time to understand how the world works and how what they see works together and how they hear works together and how these things all work together. And so this is very, very important for them to be able to do. A nurse is assessing a 3-year-old child and notices that the child cannot differentiate between their own perspective and that of others. So the child believes everyone sees the world as they do. Okay. The nurse recognizes this as what? So a 3-year-old child cannot differentiate between their own perspective. Okay, I understand what this is now. So they believe everyone sees the world as they do. So that's egocentricity. So that's the definition essentially of egocentricity. They believe, that's why it's not so much they think they're the center of the universe, although I kind of said that earlier. It's that they think everyone's perspective is the same as theirs. They don't understand that people see the world differently from them. It's really not until they get into abstract thinking that they're fully able to grasp that. Now, going through concrete operations, that's where they're learning there's other perspectives. That's what science is all about, right? That's what running experiments is all about, right? You do it this way, I do it this way. Do we end up in this with the same outcome? Do we end up with different outcomes? And we start to understand that there's different perspectives on things. And that's an important thing that they're learning in concrete operations. And then by the time they get to formal operations, they're able to abstract and they're able to understand not only is their perspective different, but the inputs they've had in their life have been different from other people, right? So the inputs in my life are different from the inputs in your life. And my perspective may be different because of the inputs I've had in my life. And your perspective is different because of the inputs you've had in your life. And we're able to talk about that. Like, let's talk about all these different things that have affected us and our point of view and all that. That's why just talking is just so important, y'all. Just talking together, understanding each other's perspectives is just so important. The parents of a 6-year-old are concerned that their child cannot understand that 2 equal amounts of clay remain the same even when one is rolled into a long snake shape and the other remains a ball. What is the best response by the nurse? So we talked about what this is. It's called conservation of matter. So even if something takes 2 different shapes, it can still be the same amount of whatever. And that's conservation of matter. Now they start to learn that in concrete operational stage. And concrete operational, according to Piaget, is ages 7 to 11. So actually, pre-operational, I don't expect them to know how to do this. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't children out there who understand the principle of conservation at age 4, 5, 6. There are kids out there that understand that. But you don't call one child delayed just because another child is more advanced. Okay? That's not what you do. So what you say is, well, when's the normal range? Well, they're not really supposed to start learning this till they're 7, so it's fine. It's important for you to continue to work on this with them, or they may be delayed. That's not true. This is normal for a child their age. That is true. We may need to get them tested for a developmental delay. That's not true. Your child is advanced for their age and cognitive development. That's not true. This is actually normal for their age and the stage of development that they're in. A nurse is preparing to teach a group of parents about developmental milestones. Which statement by a parent indicates a need for further teaching? Okay, further teaching. So I'm looking for the false statement. My 2-year-old is just beginning to talk to me. Y'all, talking can start early, but it's usually you don't really start to expect talking until they're into age 2, sometimes 2.5, sometimes maybe even 3. So I'm fine with that. That's good. My 7-year-old understands that volume remains constant regardless of the container shape. Well, some parent says that to you. They're really keeping up with their child's development. So 7 is great. That's great if they get that. That's good. My 15-year-old is still unable to think abstractly. All right. They should have started thinking abstractly at age 12. So they've had some time. A 15-year-old should definitely be able to think abstractly. So there's some developmental delay going on there. My 4-year-old believes that the vacuum cleaner is alive and can get angry. Well, 3 to 6 is magical thinking. So that's fine. D is fine. C is the one that I would be concerned they may be a bit developmentally delayed. Again, there's lots of reasons why this could be. It doesn't mean they're not intelligent or anything like that. There could be other reasons for it. But that still is a developmental delay that needs to be assessed. The nurse is assessing a child who is unable to understand that actions can be reversed. Oh, that's reversibility. I said earlier I didn't know what reversibility is. Okay. The nurse is assessing a child who is unable to understand that actions can be reversed, such as realizing that water frozen into ice can be melted back into water. Oh, okay. So it's the same as so reversibility is the same as conservation. According to Piaget, this child is likely in which stage of development? So they're unable to understand reversibility, and reversibility and conservation occurs in concrete operations, and the stage before that is pre-operational. So they have to be pre-operational. Now, the reason I'm going through so many questions with you and seeming to ask the same thing over and over again is because it takes a while to get it. Like, you have to get it. Otherwise, you're going to be going, wait a minute, which one was it? And I'm saying the same things over and over again. This is why I do videos with you, so you can see how I'm thinking, so you can see how to think, how you have to understand this. It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about understanding how to apply those facts. A 5-year-old child is being assessed for developmental delays. The nurse notices that the child does not engage in pretend play and has difficulty using language to express thoughts. What should the nurse recommend? So that is delayed. They should be able to start using language usually by the time they're 3. And they should be engaging in pretend play at the age of 3 as well. So I'd be concerned that they are developmentally delayed. So refer for developmental evaluation. Yes. Wait another year. I wouldn't. They're 6. Once they hit 7, they're supposed to be in concrete operations, and they haven't even achieved any of the pre-operational stuff yet. So I'm not going to wait another year. Enrolling the child in a gifted program. No action. This is normal development. No. So I would refer them for developmental evaluation. A nurse is planning to teach a group of adolescents about health promotion to effectively engage them according to their cognitive development stage that a nurse should. Now, remember, this is specifically asking about their cognitive development, and adolescents are able to abstract. So aren't choosing the one that we would most likely use to teach adolescents. Like, we may say, well, I would use this to teach adolescents. It doesn't matter what you would do. They want to know what's appropriate according to their cognitive development, which is abstract thinking. Use concrete examples and hands-on activities. No, because that's concrete operations. That would be school-age children, not adolescents. Adolescents is the word for teenagers. Okay, teenagers, which is 13, 14, that, right? They're in formal operations. School age is the word used for concrete operations. Use simple language and visual aids. No, that's not appropriate. Focus on abstract concepts and future implications. Yes. That's why when we talk about smoking or drinking or driving drunk, when we talk about adolescence, we talk about future implications. If you did this could happen, right? And it's, look, whether or not they understand cause and effect, whether they believe it's going to happen is another story. Remember, the NCLEX is a perfect world. So if you teach them cause and effect, they're going to believe it's going to happen. They can understand cause and effect starting at age 12, which is abstract thinking. Incorporate pretend play and storytelling. No, that's pre-operational. So C is the correct answer. So this is pretty important information for you to know for NCLEX and probably for any standardized test you may take as part of your nursing program. And also, y'all, if you're a parent and you have young kids, no matter how quickly they go through some of these developmental stages, and you may have kids that go through them more quickly than you might expect them to go through, it's still really good to know. It helps you pick out appropriate toys for your kids and to do and have appropriate expectations, right? Not expect them to be more developed than they should be at their age. So I hope this was helpful to you. Thanks for being a part of our Klimek Review family. Take care.